All right, high yield. High yield, I borrowed the word from finance, high yield investing, which is taking awfully large risks to get high returns. But for some reason, lead generation doesn't work that way. You don't have to take a lot of risk to get high yield. So I'll cover that now. Right, so first, Jeff Bezos. All right. I'm not seeing the top of my slide. Houston, we have a problem. That's right, it is Fijian slides. They don't work all the time. Right, so that's, is it like a different sizes?
Do you want to keep talking and I'll...
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, I'll keep talking. Cool. Doesn't matter. It's just a headline. Who needs a headline, right? The least most important part of an ad. All right? All right. Whatever. Cool. All right, so this was the first letter that was written by Jeff Bezos, the CEO and largest shareholder of Amazon, to his shareholders in 1997. And what he said was, because of our emphasis on the long term, we make decisions and weigh trade-offs differently than some companies. Accordingly, we want to share with you our fundamental management and decision-making approach so that you, our shareholders, may confirm that it is consistent with your investment philosophy. And you can already see that that's a marketer talking there, because he's trying to tell shareholders who are not on the long-term journey to basically bugger off, because he's not going to play the short-term game. And I've read all of the letters are worth reading. They're quite instructive. They're very simply written, so it's definitely you should check that out. Just Google Jeff Bezos annual report. Right, and then he continues, we will continue to measure our progress and the effectiveness of our investments analytically, and to jettison those that do not provide acceptable returns, step up our investments in those areas that work best, and we will continue to learn from our successes and our failures. Now, remember, this is before Amazon was Amazon in its current size and capacity. And he's already talking about being someone who wants to learn from his successes and mistakes. And there's a lot of lessons that we can learn about that in our marketing. And we will make bold rather than timid investments, and we will have learned another valuable lesson in either case, whether we succeed or fail. So then he goes on about how he wants to obsess over customers, and word of mouth remains the most powerful customer acquisition tool that we have, and repeat purchases. It's just all back-end stuff, and way to acquire customers that are cheaper, as well as the most powerful way, actually, because when you come recommended, you generally don't have any resistance. Right, so the ideas that we can all use, first one is the real world is messy and unpredictable, which is what he's saying, that some things will get right, some things will get wrong. Customer obsession, awesomeness is a necessary but not sufficient condition for virality. That's just a fancy way of saying that even though you're awesome doesn't mean that you're going to be successful, but in order to be successful, you have to be awesome. Right, number 3 is risk-taking and tinkering is required for feedback. So you need to try a bunch of stuff. There's no holy grail that's going to be laid out for us that if we only do it, we'll get success, and that's all there is to it. Otherwise, none of us will be sitting here. And number 4 is that there's a trade-off between short-lived, short-term tactics and long-lasting, long-term strategies. And sometimes you have to lose in the short term to win in the long term. And someone has to work hard, and how hard you work is irrelevant. So the point there was that someone has to work hard. You don't have to work hard, but someone has to do the work, right? So that's where creating of systems, processes, all that comes into play, that you may have to work hard in the thinking part of it, but still someone has to do the work. And the last one is use what makes sense to you and throw the rest out. And that applies to what I'm going to be saying next, that there are elements of what I'm going to say that you may resonate with. There's elements of what I'm going to say that you will think is a bunch of crap. That's fine. use what's useful for you, and what you don't want to use, don't. The point being that there are no rules, and it's all about feedback. And to get feedback, we need to try new things. Cool. Now, this is an approach to marketing. This is not the approach to marketing. I don't pretend to have the holy grail. In fact, it doesn't exist. So let's move on and get the quote from Peter Drucker, which is the aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well that the product or service fits him and sells itself. Probably the best quote in marketing I've ever read. Now, the only job of a business to kind of carry on from the fact that you want to know your customer is to do market segmentation. The modern word in the IM world, or internet marketing world, they call it customer avatar, all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, it's segmenting the market. It's finding pockets of people that you should do business with. And once you do that, you can then target them, and if you target them, then you need to come up with your positioning. And then comes the versioning of your offers. All right, so you can have multiple market segments that you work with, and your offer will be different. So for example, if you were a wine manufacturer, for example, you could have a wine that people use for cooking. You can have a wine that you use at your weekend barbecue with just your family and friends, and then you can have wine that you may want to give as a gift to, say, Stephen, for example, for helping you grow your business. Now, each of the price points will be different, right? So you may buy a Penfolds Grange for Stephen. Yeah? An empty bottle, someone said. Yeah. So, well, you can also buy the $5 bottle. So it's the same person, but what's changed, how much they spend, is the context within which they buy. So understanding the context within which your market operates is really important. Right, so the one-on-one market segmentation. Okay, so anyway, individualized marketing. Now, this is the one I've created for leads of the software. This is within the software, because you can create charts and all that. But basically what it shows here is, no? Does it? All right, doesn't matter. All right, so you can see my scores, which is the blue, and then the slightly darker shade is the average scores. So that's the scores of everyone, and then the light scores are my scores, is in whoever took the decision tree or went through the decision tree. And you can see that why am I doing this? Is because I'm trying to understand where they sit before I sell to them. So this person is technically very competent, but he can also see that the average person out there is kind of much worse than him, from the technical perspective, because you can see the technical the graph or the line on the technical axis is much higher than the average. But similarly, he's not very good at marketing, not very good at analytics, not very good at persuasion, not very good with people either. So what this tells me is, like, now if I want to sell to this person, what do I need to do? Because I know what his weaknesses are, or her weaknesses. I can come up with a very specific autoresponder sequence to educate them in all the parts that are missing within their chart. And this is the way in which I do customer profiling. And it's an example of how to do customer profiling. So if you're getting customers, everyone's going to come with a different skill set, experience, mindset. And before you start selling, it's important to sort of see where they sit within the grid. So if you're, so in my case, I evaluate them on 8 different X's, and then I put them to separate autoresponder sequences. Now, what I'm also doing with this data is I'm using Drip now, moving everything over to Drip, which is an autoresponder system. And what it does, as soon as I pass all the information to Drip, what Drip does, it immediately triggers different kinds of autoresponder sequences or subsequences based off a central sequence. So nobody is going to get the same message. Steve, we good? Oh, right, okay. No worries. Right, so how did all this start? Some years ago, oh, beauty, thank you. All right, cool. So some years ago, I bought a brand out of hair care product. It looks like this. It's called Beautylogy, the science of beauty, inside and out. It is hair care. I know. It was a bad experiment. All right. So the first thing I did to make it sell, I came up with a whole bunch of landing pages. That's one. That's another one. That's another one. I made about, I don't know, about 20, 30 different. And they were basically long-form copy, video. I did everything I could to make this thing work. And nothing worked. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you. All right. So nothing worked consistently. But keep tinkering and tweaking. And then I learned that traditional marketing made rest in peace. All right, cool. So trichologists, they're scientists who know scalp and hair. I ran into one who used to work for Procter & Gamble, and they're big in the hair and skin space. And so I asked her, I said, if someone came to you for a hair consult, what would you do? So she gave me this. And she said, so I said, all right, thank you. So I'll explain what this is, actually, because it's actually not a quiz, it's actually a decision tree. And you can see that the first question is basically straight or curly. In fact, this is an older version, because she told me there's actually 4 hair types, not 2 hair types. And this is the one for straight, and there was similarly one for each one of these hair types. And based on the question, if you answered yes, you go down here. If you answered no, you went down here. If you answered yes, you went down here. If you answered yes, you went down here, until all the way to these orangey yellow kind of boxes. And they have little numbers on them. And what those numbers are bits of content that she wrote about each one of those answers you gave. And all those numbers change based on what path you took. And so I was like, great. I think I've got the answer. Then I tried to implement this. And it cost me a kidney. So version 0.01. Now the fancy word is called MVP. Back then it wasn't. I just say, have a go. All right, so that's having a go. All right, so that's what it looked like. Version 1. How many hair mistakes are you making? Do you know why you should never blow dry your hair immediately after washing it? Okay, I won't tell you. It's because it damages your hair, actually. And do you know how long you should wait before you start applying products? Anyway, so the point was that it was to create a whole lot of open loops in the mind of my prospect. And they had to take a 30-second test to get their personalized report. And this is what it did. All right, so your hair evaluation. I want hair with body, bounce, shine, blah, 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 blah. See, there's a guy doing it, see? You ladies are impressed, right? My hair is thinning, limp, damaged, dry. Basically, I covered everything I could. And I want to stop knots and tangled hair, static and flyaways, split ends, my hair brushing nightmare, damaged hair from multiple treatments. My scalp is healthy, dry, flaky, itchy. And then it gave you a little bit of this, and then it gave you a bit of that, and then it said, give me your email. And then it gave you the results, which was the recommendation, naturally, was the product. But this worked, actually, funny enough. But the problem was that none of the answers were captured. It's version 0.01. It was just all make-believe. I was just testing to see, because in order to capture those answers would have required a big database at the back and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, I don't know if this works. So it worked, but none of the answers were captured, which means I could not do very specific autoresponder sequences because there was no data to work with. But the theory kind of started getting a bit more, had a few more legs to it. And the recommendations were not dynamic. So no matter what you picked on that 4 or 5 questions, you'd still get the same damn recommendation, which wasn't the best thing to do. But but it worked. Who said you have to be honest in marketing? Changes were long, hard, and expensive, all right? But this kind of gave the evidence that, you know what, maybe there's a bit more to this. All right, so then I started, but it worked, all right. So when not to use one of those decision tree type things is if you have a product or service that needs high touch for sales, like if you're selling mining services to BHP, okay, decision tree is not going to work because you need to talk to them. Or if your offer is so crazy that people would be dumb not to buy it, like if you're doing, Boxing Day sale or something where you got 80% off and people will run for the fridge and hug it and that kind of thing, you don't need to use a decision tree because there's nothing there to find. It's just a stupid price and make people run. But basically, anywhere in between that, you could use it wherever you need to learn a little bit more about your prospect or customer before you start talking to them. Now, if you are in the personal services business, so let's say, I don't know, if you're doing building and all this sort of stuff and you're only going to get a handful of clients, there's no need to do that. This is more if you're going to do some volume. Any questions so far? All right. Still awake? All right, when to use decision trees? It's better when you want to learn about your prospects' needs before you make an offer, which tends to be with most commercial interactions. And when you know that someone is not ready to buy now. So if someone's got a serious back problem and they need a chiropractor now, you know what, there's no need to ask them a whole bunch of questions to learn about their back pain. Just send them to the chiropractor. And what do we do with someone who is not quite ready to buy? So I was talking to a bunch of guys in the US recently. They spend about $10 million a year in Facebook advertising. And they have a 1% conversion. They go from ad directly to a sales page, and they converted 1%. So I asked them, what do you do with the other 99? And they said nothing. Ouch. Because there's a lot of money to be made. Because what they're saying is that, go from the ad to the sales page. If you don't buy, we don't care about you. But there's remarketing opportunities. You can take them back to a decision tree, a quiz, or something, some other way to re-interact with them. Clearly, they clicked the ad, so there's some interest there. So that was wasted. Okay, where the bloody hell are you? All right, so basically, what we want to find out is where our buyers are in the continuum. Everywhere from problem, so I don't know, I don't believe, and I don't accept my problem, to is there a solution that's possible, and then you start searching for solutions, and you consider a whole bunch of products, and then you buy, and then you use, and then you work out whether it's good or not, and then you start talking, and then you have a repurchase sort of a decision. So each one of us is on this spectrum at some point whenever you're going to buy a product. Generally, when you go to a grocery store, obviously you're in buying mode. But if you were tomorrow, let's say, going to invest in a new employee, then you're going to be first you realize I've got a problem, I need to hire someone, and then I'll go, well, can I find someone in Australia or should I go overseas? And then you put the ads, and then you start considering your prospects, or your prospective employees, and then you'll get through to the buying experience. I'm just kind of giving you another example of where this applies. All right. Now that's, it's essentially the same thing, what I just showed you previously, but just want to, some guys in the B2B world will show you that people are strangers and they become visitors and then leads and then a qualified lead and then a customer and then a consumer with someone who's buying and then a repeat customer and then a promoter. It's the same thing. But the point of this slide is basically that you have actions happening at each one of these stages. So for example, when they're a stranger, they might click something. If they're a visitor, they're going to submit a form. They become a lead. To go from a lead to a qualified lead, they'll click or they download something. To go from a qualified lead to a customer, they'll purchase something. So what's basically happening here is that their interaction or action they take is indicative of where they are in the buying continuum, from everything from problem aware all the way through to I'm ready to buy. And so we want to track all that. So just to give you, again, slightly bigger because the other slide was small, the marketing collateral that you would have at each of the phases. So it would be like, ads and content. Visitor would be browsing on your website. The lead is they're completing a form, a free report, a decision tree, a quiz or something. If they're a marketing qualified lead, then they'll kind of have a pricing page, buying criteria. So if you're tracking all this sort of stuff, based on the actions they're taking on your site, you can actually start working out where this person is in the buying continuum, where they're ready to buy. The whole point being, don't try to sell to them until they're at the phase where they should be sold to. Otherwise, you get a 1% conversion. So this is to increase the conversion rate. Now, there may be people who are directly, right there, nah, just meet with me, give me the price, give me the demo, I'm hurting. fine. They're ready to buy now. So they'll jump straight away from stranger to a sales qualified lead right away. But not everybody does that. The point here being that our job is to get them over here, but at their time with respect, rather than trying to sell right away. Right. Okay, so this came up from a book called Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz. Oops. And what he did was he shares in that book 2 ways to analyze the market. One is the state of product awareness, which is what I just covered there, which is you're unaware of a problem, you're need aware, you're problem aware, you're solution aware, and then you're product aware. But this is also an important way to look at the market, which is where's your market sitting in the realm of how much marketing they've seen. So are you the first to the market? So for example, if you're Elon Musk and you're trying to sell a package to get to Mars, you'll be first to market. And if someone tomorrow came up with another way to get to Mars, then he'll be the second to market. But by the time we get to fat loss, we're kind of like at market exhausted, like they've seen every way of trying to lose weight. And so the market's quite saturated, or at least the customer is saturated from the perspective of being overexposed to marketing. They're kind of tired. They're hard to convince. And the point of that is that you can actually form a grid with those 2 metrics. So you can say, well, my market is problem aware, and they've seen many claims, so they're sitting in this box. I'm going to cover why that's important in a second, but basically know that sales occurs when they become product aware, i.e. what are you selling? But you may find your entire market sitting somewhere over here when you first run into them. And so if you're getting a low conversion rate, it's because they're probably sitting over here rather than here. So our goal is to capture them here and then nurture them to a sale. And not everybody is going to be ready, right? So that's the important bit. All right, break time. Questions? No? All right. Okay, so what is a decision tree? Because of the light, I think you can't really see too well. But basically, I'll do a demo later. Let me just quickly go through it. So what it is if you come down a path, you can actually start breaking off where people go based on much like the hair one that I shared with you. But this is what it looks like in the software. It's exactly the same thing. You just drag and drop boxes and you make a way to paths based on the answers they've given you. So if someone says yes or no, you can go down different directions based on the answers they're giving. So each subsequent question can be derived of the previous one. So if you say, are you a man or a woman? Then someone says they're a woman. Then the next question could be, well, as a woman, how old are you? And they'll say, well, I'm in my 30s. Then you can say, well, as a woman in her 30s. And so as you're moving down the path, they actually, the probability of leaving you now is much less because you're resonating so much more because you're giving them exactly what they've given you in the previous answer back in the next question. Okay, that's called paraphrasing. Right, there's another one here. Now this one here is pretty interesting. For those of you who've got large lists but don't know what to do with it, you can actually put them into a decision tree, come down here and split them off into, in this case, I think there's about 15 or 16 different lists. So this is microsegmenting. So what this person had done was that they had lots of leads sitting in one list, I think about a couple 100,000. And so they emailed the list and pushed them through a small decision tree. And as a result of the answers they gave, they split them up into a whole bunch of segments. And now they're hitting each one of those segments specifically with the offer that matches to that segment. So if someone had said that they're only interested in getting long hair, then you're not going to mail them about split ends, for example. All right, I'll do the demos later. All right, so what kind of results can you get? This is for a book launch with Michael Gerber. His E-Myth book launch. I had worked on that. There was a 50% ROI we got. That's a client in the US. They're doing about 3,000 to 4,000 leads a day. That's a 60% opt-in. That's in the debt market, about a 30% opt-in. The reason why you get these high response rates is because you resonate really well because you're making sure that the rapport is there and you do paraphrasing, which is you take the previous answer and give it back in the next question. Right. Basically, why do they work? Why does this thing work? Because you're delivering interactive experience that engages and personalizes and dynamically generates tailor-made results. So one of the other things that I do is make sure that the lead magnet they get is also dynamically generated based on the answers they've given you. So if you give me, if you tell me that you've got long hair problems, then the lead magnet will be only about long hair. I won't talk about split ends or anything else. So you're basically making sure that you tailor your lead magnets as well to the answers they've given you. Right? So it's being relevant, understandable, and then you're influential as a result of that, but you're hard to rip off. Because one of the problems you're going to face when you start doing a lot of volume is that people start copying you. Good luck trying to copy that. Because you could have come down only one path, but unless you can see the map, you don't know the other path sitting in this decision tree. So you're actually unrip-offable. The more complex you make this, the less likelihood, the probability of copying you is zero, basically, because there's no way for them to work out that they've got many other questions sitting in here. So which means your campaigns can run much longer, in fact, months. All right. This was an interesting stat I ran into, is that 5% of content gets 90% of all engagement, which means 95% of your content gets no engagement. So then the next question was, well, what kind of content gets engagement? So that's when I moved 100% to dynamically generated stuff. I don't do any static, very little static content now. And almost all of it is interactive. And if we just change the pitch, you can make an interactive content that wasn't so interactive all of a sudden become much more interactive, in the sense that the response rates, you can move the response rates by changing the pitch of your content, the survey or quiz, whatever you want to give them. If you can change the appeal, you can change the engagement. So that's one of the other things. Right. I'll do the demo later. Right. So the hair one that we saw, it only had 3 questions. We had the first question with 4 answers, and there were 2 checkbox questions. Now, checkbox question is basically where you can select more than one answer. So which of the following problems do you have? And you can select 1, none, all. I had 5 choices in that one, so that gives you 2 to the power of 5, so it's 32 combinations. And there were 2 of those. So together you have 4,096 paths that you can create from 3 questions. And what does each path represent? And it's basically a market segment. So now you're tracking your market segments vertically based on the number of paths. Some of those paths obviously has nobody in it, because they may not have, based on the traffic you run, you may find nobody's on a path. That's no big deal, because the system's tracking everybody. And then you can start working out clusters of where people are, right? Which means now you can then go back and rechange your offer and your sales page and everything else to match each of those segments. All right, just going to cover something quite nerdy, which is a priori and post hoc. There are 2 different types of market segmentation. One is a priori is basically top down. Which is what normally gets taught in the internet marketing world. You go and you check the competitors out, you spy on people, all this sort of stuff, and you say, well, based on the data I've collected, or you do a survey, and you say, well, you know what, based on the data I've collected, there are 5 groups sitting here, or 5 clusters sitting over here. Post hoc is basically you throw everything out there, you see who's interacting with what, and then you go back and look at the data, and you say, well, hang on a second. Everyone who bought, what do they look like? And so then you're going from the bottom up rather than top down. I think you should do both, and I'll share how I go about doing that. I'll skip that one. Okay, so how to uncover hidden markets. So basically, you're giving people a pick-your-own-journey type of a decision tree, which potentially has millions of segments. I had one customer who created 10 checkbox questions with 10 choices. That ends up being about 10 quadrillion. There's not, so it was a bit of an overkill, to say the least. But nevertheless, it was good to see that you can push, you can really push it if you want to. So therefore, millions of market segments is actually it's totally achievable. And as a result, what ends up happening is that you end up getting multiple custom avatars. So this notion of one custom avatar actually does not exist. And what you're doing is you're not including your assumptions, or understanding. You let the people do what they do, and you just observe on the side and think, well, where are they going in my funnel, and who's buying what? And that's how you uncover the real market segments. In fact, those market segments are hard for anybody else to find because it's based on your proprietary data. Nobody else has that data except for you. So they can get Google data, and they can get, they may be able to get some revenue data, but they don't know the questions and answers they gave you, unless they replicate your decision tree. But if you have lots of parts in them, they can't even do that. Right, so you miss, now the real value is that you find gaps that your competitors will never get. And, right, now how do you deliver that? What are the applications? Okay, so they look like quizzes. You can do assessments, you can do calculators, you can do personality profiling. So the one that I showed you with the eight ways to profile in the lead generation market, that's a personality profiling one. I track your answers, and then I chart you on a chart. And you can also do dynamic reports. I've got clients now who are doing 100% personalized sales letters now, because they're capturing all this data, and then regenerate the entire sales letter based on all the questions and answers they've received. Right, how to make one of these? So basically, you work out what value you want to give your customer base. So what makes them tick? And I'm going to cover that in a second. That turns into a lead magnet. And then you work out what's the format and the structure of your decision tree that you want to ask. And that turns into the answers. That's the questions. And then finally the pitch in the front of it to make the whole thing work. So basically, you start from the end and you work to the front. Right. So step one. One of the other things I found recently is that a lot of people get kind of hung up. They're like, man, it's going to take forever to do this, all this sort of stuff. I'm like, so then I made a training program called the 1 Hour Decision Tree. And I'm including that as part of this presentation here, just to show that it doesn't have to be that hard. Don't make it hard. Right, why does this work? Because it eliminates paralysis by analysis. There's a little wiggle room. And the goal is get the damn thing live. Don't get hung up on how it looks. There's a good chance it's going to fail, in which case nobody's going to see it anyway. So get it out there. All right, top down. This is normally how people do market research. You do this thorough research. You spend weeks of your life doing this because you don't want to get it wrong. And then you find your segment somehow. And then you do the marketing, and then you reiterate. Normally people just stop at marketing. All right, bottom up. You learn just enough to do the marketing. And that gives you the segments, and then you reiterate. All right, so I prefer the bottom up one because this just cuts the crap out of it. Right, so that's the format in the 1 hour, how I go about doing it. But I won't do that now. So, all right, step one, rapid fire research. All right, Google is your best friend. So all you have to do is just go best ways to, worst ways to, 10 mistakes, 10 benefits. Amazon comments, if you've got a product that's similar to something on Amazon, look at all the comments, the questions and answers that are sitting in there. The comments that are being made about the product, the good comments and the bad comments. That tells you what people like and what people hate. You can study offers that your market is giving, other people out there who are selling similar products. And you can look at your own products and any competitor products that you have and their websites. That's normally enough for you to come up with what are you going to ask the market. But once again, it's rapid fire, right? So we don't care too much about getting it right. Let's just get it out there. And you're skimming for quality, and you cull fast. So if you run into a dodgy page, just move on. Quickly open up the next one on your Google search results. And the goal is you only need 3 to 5 pages. All right, so what's going to happen is that you're going to end up with open up Excel or Google Docs. You cut and paste the text, the graphic, anything that you find that's interesting about what you just learned. So for example, in my case, when I was in the hair market, I ran into some research that said that your hair is most likely to get damaged immediately after you wash it. All right, so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of that. So I'll take that as a nugget. And you copy and paste the reference. The reason why I want to copy and paste the reference is because at some point in the future, you'll want to make a free report about it or use it as some other marketing campaign. You'll be like, I have no idea where I got that from. So just make sure you keep the references. They can be facts and figures, know-how, secrets, crucial steps. And people write articles, like so much content is out there. It's got all these beautiful things already done for us. You're just capturing it and restructuring it. All right, we only need 5 or 10 nuggets because they're your questions. And you review the feedback and comments, if you find any. So Amazon.com, shopping sites, blog posts, Facebook groups, research. You can put together a checklist, people asking questions on Quora, Reddit. And if you really want to start tracking this stuff, just use keyhole.co or mention.com or something where you can actually put. All right. Now, the action step is to get the benefits desired or attained, and the frustrations and problems experienced, and the feelings expressed. Now, any questions so far? All right. All right, so that gives you the inventory of interesting facts. That's something that I learned from Gary Halbert, a brilliant copywriter. So here's just an example. Like, most psychological research cannot be replicated. So when people tell you that it's a proven study, just quote that. If someone Chile was helping a guy in the relationship market, and so then I started searching for high divorce rates, low divorce rates, all this sort of stuff, and I found that Chile has the lowest divorce rate at 3%, and Belgium has the highest divorce rate. So move to Chile if you hate your wife or husband. Anyway, so that's an interesting fact. I was like, wow, I didn't realize there was such a big variance. Interesting facts don't have to come in statements. They can also come in a chart. This is suicide by hanging, strangulation, and US spending on science and space and technology. So the more you spend, the more people kill themselves. Clearly, it's just correlation, not causation. But when you're looking at very large data sets, you are going to find relationships that look like this. They're very interesting, and they're great for starting your sales letter with. Okay? How US spending kills people, or something like that. All right, next one. Number of people who drown by falling into a swimming pool, and the movies that Nicolas Cage appears in. We need to drown Nicolas Cage, I think. Right, so once again, it's a very high correlation. It's garbage, but as you can see, it's quite interesting. Well, I find it interesting anyway. Weirdo. All right, how to use these interesting facts? Just kidding. All right, so how to use these interesting facts? So you could use it as a headline. You can use it as a pitch for your decision tree or your quiz. You can use it as a bullet. So for example, a 3% divorce rate, discover the secrets of the longest lasting relationships in the world. How many behaviors of the longest lasting relationships in the world will you get right? That could be a quiz. This could also be another quiz title, which is what is your long and loving relationship IQ? You could be asking a whole bunch of questions about relationships. All right, then you decide on the lead magnet. What is this thing that is going to deliver the value? So normally what people say is just get your PDF. Here we're generating the PDF on the fly, so we can pretty much create whatever we want. So what you want to do is create this super fast and make it valuable. So chart, very fast to create, at least in lead Zuckers, that is. You can create a cheat sheet, a score, a rating. You can have a mortgage recalculator, any kind of stuff that adds a lot of value but does not take a long time to create. All right, so all we're doing is we're information brokers. We're just getting information that is normally unstructured, and we're putting it into a format that allows people to consume it really quickly, but also get a lot of value out of it. That's the whole goal of a lead magnet. Okay, so now we're going to build the questions. That's supposed to say step 4. Build questions that allows the creation of the lead magnet. So we worked out, this is the lead magnet we want to deliver. Now you work back to the questions that allows you to then create the lead magnet. Right? So you're just working backwards. All right, so the purpose is to get the data to build the lead magnet. You go through the nuggets of information and you turn that into a question, because you've already done all the nugget work. The fact. So for example, if you find a fact, interesting fact, the most important metric for a business is customer lifetime value. So what's the question? Select the most important metric. It doesn't have to be complicated. So just take whatever facts you've got and just turn them into a question. It can be as simple as select the most important metric, and you say an opt-in rate, conversion rate, customer lifetime value, click-through rate, and get them to pick the most important one. So that's just turning information you've captured into a question. Any questions on that? All right. All right, step 5 is the pitch. How do you make people want to go through this thing that you've just made? You come up with 3 presuppositions. Now, if it's a big enough project, if you're kind of going for a big market and you've got money to burn, then do a bit more work on this. Once again, this is the 1-hour version, so that's why we're only going to do 3. I'll cover what a presupposition is in a second. And that kind of you add to the start page, which is the welcome page before someone goes through your quiz. Could be a landing page. And the format you want to have is you have a headline, which is presupposition, an image of the desired outcome. So someone with a good body, if it's a weight loss product, a laughing family, all that sort of stuff. If it's relevant, and add a subhead, and then the image of the lead magnet if you want. So for example, if you're creating a chart, tell them that this is what it's going to look like when they go through this, because it gives them a little bit of a taste for what they're going to get. And a call to action. I'll just keep it simple. Let's begin or start now. All right. Now, these are some universal appeals. Like I said, it's the 1-hour method. We don't want to spend too much time trying to work things out. So Victor Schwab, in this book called Mail Order Strategy, I think it's from the 1960s, he had worked out, based on all the ad campaigns that he ran, that people want to gain health, popularity, praise from others, the pride of accomplishment, self-confidence, and a whole bunch of stuff that people want to gain. Also, people want to save time, discomfort, risks, money, worry, embarrassment, work, doubts. And people want to be good parents, creative, recognized authorities, up-to-date, first in, sociable, all that sort of stuff. And they want to do. They want to express their personality, satisfy their curiosity, appreciate beauty, win others' affection, resist domination by others, collect or acquire things, and improve themselves generally. So what we want to do is we want to use this list and use that as a way to now adjust our presupposition so that we cover as many of these that are applicable. All right? All right, so which one of these appeals would be relevant for your market? So if I was in, let's say for example, if we're doing a fat loss product or a fat loss ebook, there could be health, could be praise from others, like you've got a nice body, all that sort of stuff, and pride of accomplishment. I made it, I lost before and after shots, that sort of thing. What else could we have? People want to save embarrassment, maybe, worry. People want to do improve themselves generally. So there's a few things in there that will appeal to in every market. In every market, they have to kind of satisfy one or more of these. So then you ideate around this. So once again, we're trying to laser in to what you can ideate about. Because that's where the normal problem occurs, is people go, I don't know what to do next. And so rather than trying to come up with inspiration, you just borrow of Victor Schwab. Right, so then you create the pitch. So one of the things I did is I worked out what was the most shared content, I think last year, the year before. And there ended up being all these quizzes that were being done. And so I grabbed all the titles and I grabbed all the subheads. So now I've got my titles and my subheads as well. So I just model of that. I just swipe that. So what's your secret power? Can we guess your age? What color? Should you dye your hair according to your personality? Who will you marry? What kind of sexy are you? All that sort of stuff. And then there are the subheads. So I just pick one of these that appeals most to me, or create two or three versions of this. And that's your subhead there. You can model that as well. Right? So once again, very easy. I think so. Yes? All right. All right, presuppositions. So a presupposition is something where the answer is contained within the statement or the question you have. So which of the following fat loss triggers are you missing? It presupposes that there is something called a fat loss trigger, and it presupposes that you're actually missing it. So you're compelled to continue. It's just classic NLP. How many odd things can you spot in this image? I recently used that. Got shared a lot. People who can't lose weight, and this is the statement form of it. That's the question form. That's the statement form. People who can't lose weight are usually surprised how well a 2-minute hack works. So once again, the reason why I'm not going to say you here, because Facebook sometimes doesn't like you sort of things. So you make it people, and so that way people then, whoever's reading it, will see themselves in the statement. Okay, so step 6. Now you build the lead magnet. You've collected all the data, and now it's just a matter of just putting it together. One thing I want to focus on is naming your lead magnet. I found this to be affects response rates, actually. If you just call everything quiz, then it probably won't respond as well as giving it a more appropriate name. So if, for example, you don't call it a quiz if you're trying to do a valuation of a business. You call it a valuation. So similarly, I've come up with a whole bunch of names. I went through quite a lot of data that's out there, and you can have action steps, advice, analysis, audit, calculator, capability, grade, a cheat sheet, course, evaluation, qualification, a quote, a rating, a recommendation, a sales proposal, a score, a test, a type, a valuation, or an offer selector. Basically, make up any name that is most appropriate with your market. Right, a great lead magnet has a clear-cut, built-in, unique superiority supported by powerful proof elements. All right, so we want to make sure that we get the lead magnet right. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want it to be shared. And this allows your content to start going viral. Right, so the unique advantages, the questions to ask after you've made it, just to make sure you got it right. Why is this lead magnet made the way it is? Can you improve it? What consumer problems, desires, or needs is your lead magnet designed for? Are you addressing something that already pre-exists in the market? What's special about your lead magnet? Why does it fulfill a customer's needs better than the competition? So what I'm trying to focus here is that you're making your lead magnet work as hard as any product that you're ever going to sell. And that's the point, is that too many people are just sloppy with their lead magnets and then wonder why it doesn't get traction. If you want to generate value for someone, then offer value. So take the lead magnet creation part seriously. And what's your strongest proof element to make your case believable? So adding proof elements in there, you could have testimonials sitting on the last page on the opt-in form. And what are all the lead magnets' best features, and how does each translate into a consumer benefit? And if you had unlimited funds, how would you improve it? Once again, don't have to. This is just to stretch your imagination to say, well, hang on a second. You know, if I had more time, I could improve it in these ways. That's fine. Let's just run it. At least I know my next iteration. What can I do to improve it? The next step is step 7, which is to tweak and test. This is obviously going to embed it into your site first. The boosters, paraphrasing, which is where you take what you've just learned about someone from the first question and you're giving into the next one. So the example that I gave was if you've learned their age, then tell them what their age is. If they've given you, so let's say, for example, a hair problem, then re-quote the hair problem in the next question. That's paraphrasing. It keeps the conversation going. It makes it look real, and it mimics a real conversation. Also give reason why for each question. So if you're asking for age, then you can say that because advice for people with young people get different advice for fat loss than people who are not so young. So you can give a reason why as well. Where appropriate, don't have to do it for every question, but if you have high threshold questions like age and email, then people kind of like, start freaking out. So in that case, you can give them a good reason why to then fulfill or give you the data. Congruency, you want to make sure that if you're talking about secrets of weight loss in your ad, then make sure that your decision tree is about secrets of weight loss ad. Don't when split testing, normally what happens is that you start creating so many different permutations that you miss the fact that when they land on your landing page, that the congruency has gone wrong, where what you're saying in your ad that message doesn't carry on the landing page. Just make sure that you have that congruency set. And floor and threshold, this is a big one. Don't ask what's your income on the first question, because they're going to bounce. I see that quite a bit, especially when someone newbie joins up. They go, I want to be in the financial planning business, and I'm going to make a quiz or a decision tree about financial planning. And the first question is, what's your income? You're not going to ask that of a stranger off the street, so no point asking that of someone who comes to your site. So one of the other things you can do is you don't have to have just one decision tree. You can have multiple decision trees, so you can aggregate all this data over time. The the you versus I versus without. And this is kind of give you a few examples, like how old are you, and versus my age is. I found that when you give the perspective from internally, which is my age is or I am, you sometimes get a better response. So just how to structure the questions. And obviously you can also do it without, which is please choose your age range, or sorry, please choose your age range. And that would be without using I or you. Checkbox. Always be sure if you're ever going to give a checkbox question to say that you can select more than one answer, purely because people, as they're answering your multiple choice questions, they may come across your checkbox one and not realize that they can select more than one. So then you miss out on other problems or benefits they may seek. Or they'll stop and go, well, hang on a second, 3 of these apply to me. Why can I only pick one? But if they know that they can pick more than one, then they'll give you more than one answer. And lastly, just make sure the design is congruent with the rest of your website. Okay. The marketing side of things, just make sure that when you do end up finally launching this, that your ads, your landing pages, your email copy, your sales page, and the fulfillment of the lead magnet and any repeat sales, that they all kind of line up. Like there's congruency between from the ads all the way through to repeat sales. Right. So what's your decision tree's USP? Much like your products have a USP, your business has a USP. You want to make sure the decision tree or quiz or lead magnet also has a USP. How are you different? And that's an important question because what it allows you to do is to really focus on meeting the market need. Like don't just copy someone else if you're looking for huge response rates. When they land on your page or when they land on the ad, do I understand what this is about? So once again, reducing confusion. Do you pick the conversation from where I am and move towards a sale? So what's the conversation in the mind of the customer? If they're on Google search, then obviously they're looking for an answer, and it's apparent from the keywords they're bidding on. But if it's, for example, on Facebook or a display network, then obviously it's interruption. So you need to enter the conversation into that's going on in the mind of the customer. So that's a little bit different. The context is different. And a call to action that needs to be in context and the continuation of the message. Right, step 8, you add your tracking. How many here use Google Tag Manager? Cool, all right. Okay, he works for Google, so it's fine. So the Google Tag Manager container, just make sure you have that. At the node level, you can have Facebook events. So one of the things that, I'll share that in the next few slides, is you can actually pass Facebook events for every, who uses Facebook events? All right. Awesome. So when they answer the question, you can actually pass what the answer is into Facebook. So if they say I'm a man or a woman, you can actually pass woman as a variable into Facebook. And why do you want to do that? Is because a few weeks or a few months after you've started running your campaigns, you'll start learning where most of your money is being made. Then you can go back and do some analysis to work out what do these customers look like. So you'll get their age, you'll get their gender, you'll get all their questions and answers already sitting in Facebook. At that point, you can do a lookalike audience and start bidding on people that have just bought from you. And that's a very smart way to pick up who your real customers are. But in this case, what you're doing is you're building those events based on the answers and questions within your decision tree or quiz. A Facebook event, which is a little bit of JavaScript code, it pushes data into Facebook. So it's kind of like a pixel on steroids. Not event as in like a webinar. Correct. Any other questions? Okay. All right, step 9, take it live. You press the activate button. You start the traffic. And number 10. Now this one here, the feedback loop. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you keep, once people have gone through your decision tree, what I do is at random, I'll fire off an email into them saying, what was good about it, what wasn't so good about it, what did you, in what way did I serve you, what way did I not serve you. Because I'm trying to look for improvement so I can reiterate very, very fast. And the best way to do it is just ask someone who's just been through it. And funnel inverting. So this is my, my dodgy diagram. All right, so you have opt-in form that gets you leads. You have your offer and a checkout that gives you a customer. And basically, you have repeat customers, repeat sales, and that gives you a real customer. Okay, so basically, the guy is coming down. Now, the reason why it's going all over the place is because I'm trying to work out that it could be form A, but offer X, and then so it's you want to track not just where the traffic comes from, but also which collateral they worked with, which offer they resonated with, and then that's what allowed them to become a repeat customer. So if you flip that around, so you have your real customer, which is a guy who's bought from you more than a few times or more than once, and you can see what offer they resonated with, what forms they came from, what sort of a decision tree they came through, and what traffic source they have. And so what I normally do is at this stage, you can turn off all the traffic sources or stop bidding on stuff that is not resulting in these guys. And normally what you can do is you can take off, I've seen up to 80% of your traffic cost without losing $1 in sales. Because you've just gone really lean. Because you know exactly who these people are. You know where they've come from. Any questions on this? All right. Right, so, oops. So basically that's your traffic data. You're mashing it up with your decision tree data. And then you can also have more decision tree data there, which is after the checkout to the after the checkout and repeat sales. Between there, you could be asking them questions about who they are, why did they come through your funnel, and all sorts of other data, and then obviously your revenue data. So if you mash all three of these up, you can actually start getting some fairly valuable insights about what your real customers are and what are they doing in your funnel. Normally, how I do this is I use a basic pivot table. I dump all the data into Excel, and then I basically just drag and drop stuff into the variables into the columns and rows to see what that reveals. So it's a very kind of you play around with your data using pivot tables. Anyone here use pivot tables? Right, cool. There you go. Accountant? No. All right. Right, so who thinks this is too much work? All right, let's address that. All right, MarTech law. Basically, what we're finding is that technology is changing at an exponential rate. Clearly, the last 2 days, you've seen that. You've got a whole bunch of stuff to do in Google. You've got a whole bunch of stuff to do in LinkedIn. And you've got a whole bunch of stuff to do in Facebook. And then I'm telling you what to do. Or I'm explaining how I do it. And so basically what's happened as a result of that, the guy, I keep forgetting, I think it's called Scott Blinker, he's come up with a way to explain that, where technology is changing at an exponential rate, but organizations, and I guess us personally, we're changing at a much lower logarithmic rate. And there's a huge disconnect between the two. And it's his basic thesis is that the people who are changing to technology are the ones who are going to win, because it's thinning out the herd. So it's not about becoming a better marketer or any of that sort of stuff. It's just the technology is already kind of giving us that. There's machine learning coming through and all sorts of new ways of doing marketing, as you clearly saw from the last 3 speakers covering 3 massive platforms. Who can keep up with the change is possibly going to win. And recently they asked, surveyed, I think the top 20 or top 30 Ivy League universities, the MBA students, and they said, what's the biggest risk? And they asked things like, global warming and Donald Trump and whatever else. And they said basically technological change, because it's so fast that it's leaving people behind. And that is the biggest challenge for all of us as well going forward. NAB just announced yesterday they're going to fire 6,000 people because of technology. So sooner or later, this sort of changes will be coming through into your market as well, no matter what sort of market. Yeah, to a less extent if you're running a cafe, but more so if you have an online business. And the disruption can happen really, really fast. So that's the MarTech law. So it's almost So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I know it feels like a lot of work, you know what, but if you're not going to do it, someone else might enter your market with this skill set and they'll basically eat your lunch. There's no way around that eventuality. So, sorry. All right, so just a few quotes on personalization. Already, brands that create personalized experiences by integrating advanced digital technologies and proprietary data. So your decision tree data is proprietary data because nobody else will have that. For customers, and seeing revenue increase by 6 to 10%, according to the research that was done by this company called BCG, and they're growing at 3 or 4 times faster than people who don't. Steve, is it a good time to stop? Okay, cool. All right, personalization leaders tend to capture a disproportionate share of category profits in the new age of individualized brands, while slow movers will lose customers, share, and profits. It's purely based on one factor only, is relevancy. The more relevant you are, the bigger the market share and profit share you'll capture. I'll continue after the break.